Welcome to the Renegade Report. I am Jonathan.
And Ramon is present. And Jonathan, we have a very special guest this evening. I think that people will be interested to know. He is a podcaster, he is a rapper, he is an author, and he is the female British powerlifting champion.
I was very disappointed.
Zuby,
Yeah,
how are you,
actually.
sir?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you? I'm not sure
Uh,
if I was just misgendered there or not.
well, I do apologize in advance. Don't take me to the Human Rights Commission. I know in Britain they worry about such things.
They do.
What is irritating, but what must be irritating to you and fascinating at the same time is that you can spend almost a decade working on your skills, rapping and things like that.
Mhm.
Then you do one silly, stupid video, and like that makes you a megastar. Like, how does that feel as a person?
Well, it's over a decade I've been rapping for. I actually released my first album in 2006, so I've been in the music game for a while. So this year has been fascinating, man. Like, yeah, it's been strange. I mean, I've gained more followers, fans, haters, lovers, everything in the past 5 months than in the past 10 years, which has been pretty bizarre. So it's been cool. It's been good that I've had such a long time to slowly build up my skill base, my public profile, my ability to deal with nonsense both online and offline and kind of whatever life throws at me. I've been kind of honing that and building a very tough, uh, thick skin over the past decade so that now, whether that's people throwing crazy stuff at me online or doing a whole bunch of interviews or whatever, it's like, okay, cool, I'm ready, I'm trained for this. It's all good. So it's a little bit weird just seeing the scale of the thing growing. I mean, this time last week I had 85,000 Twitter followers and I've just hit 94,000. So that's 9,000 in a week. At the beginning of the year, I had close to around 15,000. So from it to go up like that, as well as all the other things, it's been weird. And like you said, the weirdest thing about it is what the catalyst was. So the fact that I put up this 9-second video of me doing a deadlift with a funny caption, and that was the thing that garnered both national and international attention, not necessarily even in the music world, but just across the board. You know, the amount of, I think I've done about 80 interviews this year so far, which is which is just crazy.
Yeah.
And all these opportunities are opening up, and I'm going out to the States well, just over a month now. So doors are opening, cool things are happening, and I'm just kind of, I feel like a surfer, just kind of trying to ride the wave and stay somewhat free flowing because I can only plan so much because a lot of stuff has just been happening that I haven't planned.
Yeah, I was saying I was disappointed because you're only the British female weightlifting, powerlifting champion and not the world. And I really think you should make a better effort of it. But I think it's such an interesting time because you kind of go against just a narrative in general on so many things. You are someone who is working within the entertainment industry, trying to build a name for yourself. And if you're trying to do that, most people are going to be politically correct. They're going to toe the right lines because they don't want to upset any of the wrong people. You never know what producer or what record company doesn't want to touch you now because you've said the wrong thing. And I think it's so refreshing. And people find it refreshing when anyone really is willing to just speak their mind, even if they don't necessarily agree. I wonder if you would agree with the statement that essentially being sort of a free thinker has become the counterculture, and
Oh gosh, yeah.
yeah, that's where we really are as a society, sort of globally from a cultural perspective.
Absolutely. Certainly in the Western world, certainly in the Anglosphere. So the UK, Canada, America, Australia, you know, any English speaking place, especially, it's gone a little bit off the rails to the point where just being honest and trying to be objective and telling the truth has become very revolutionary and something that people consider very brave, which is odd because we're supposed to live in the freest countries in the world, but people have this fear of the mob. People have this sort of haze hanging over them that makes them just feel like they can't express certain views or they can't say certain things. I mean, what you said there was really funny to me because when it comes to being a rapper, I'm the most politically correct rapper out there. I don't even swear. All right. I don't swear in my music. I don't rap about drugs. I don't rap about killing people. I don't rap about, doing stuff to women. I'm the most respectful, politically correct rapper that you can play in a car with your kids in the car.
Clean and straight edge.
Yeah, you're not going to worry, oh, Zuby's going to say something that they're going to pick up and is going to be awful. So to me, it's really interesting, that juxtaposition about me being in some ways to some people some sort of controversial or non-politically correct figure, but on the other hand, my music is as politically correct as Will Smith's stuff was, maybe very slightly edgier. And that just kind of speaks to where we are. So if I could go on record and rap about the most degenerate stuff. Okay, I could rap about selling drugs and taking drugs and sleeping with all these women and sleeping with that person's woman and that person's woman and doing just complete degenerate stuff, right? And loads of people do that. And we live in this bizarro upside down world where that's not considered controversial. But then me saying, oh, hang on, this and stuff, this is silly, or this is silly, or saying this is my opinion on this, or this is my opinion on that. That's what people are deeming to be controversial and not politically correct, despite the fact that I don't hold any opinions that are anything outside of a very moderate, like a pretty moderate position. It's not like I'm saying stuff that's really radical or crazy. I'm going, hey, hang on, maybe there are only two genders, okay? And everyone believed that up until a couple of years ago, didn't they? Right. So why are we suddenly trying to rewrite thousands of millennia of, and this is science, right? This is just basic things, right? I'm saying with the deadlift tweet, obviously made this point showing, look, men are different from women. Right? There are some very reasonable, objective reasons why you might not want to have people who are born men competing against women in various sports. That should not be a controversial position nor opinion, because I reckon that at least 99% of the world's population would be like, yeah, of course men and women are different. Okay, like on a global scale, right? You're not going to travel to anywhere in Africa, Asia, South America, wherever, where people are saying, oh yeah, men and women are the same thing. Or you can just, that's not how that's not how it works. That's not some crazy position. This isn't even a human thing. This is across every animal species. The male and the female are different. They have some differences, and that's fine. Everybody knows that. It's the reason why we all exist. So it's very strange that in 2019 that's now considered some controversial position, or that's something that people want to shout about or whatever. It's just it's very odd. And that's something I've been noticing building up over the past couple of years. And that's the reason why I myself have become a lot more vocal about some of these things, because it's like, okay, well, the people pushing these ideologies and the people who I think have crazy ideas, they're not shutting up, right? They're going hard. They're not worried about people saying, oh no, I think that's silly. They're just going with it. They're running with it. And that tiny fringe is managing to silence and put fear into the hearts of the vast majority of people. And I'm kind of watching this take place, and it reached a stage where I was like, okay, like other people aren't saying something. A couple of people are here and there. So I need to, if someone is pushing something on me, which I don't agree with, or I have a different perspective on it even, then why should I be afraid to voice my perspective? They're not afraid to voice their perspective. Why should I be afraid to voice my perspective? And that's just kind of how I look at it. And it turns out that a lot of people respect and appreciate that. I mean, the amount of DMs and messages I get from people in all different sectors, I'm talking about, some of them are pretty prominent people too. I've had DMs from sports players, actors, other musicians, politicians, people just saying, dude, God bless you. What you're doing is amazing. It's brave. I would get fired if I said some of the things you say on Twitter. Like, that's the one I always get. And it's encouraging, but it's also discouraging in a way, because you're kind of thinking, well, don't leave me to hang out here to dry, right? If you believe the same things I believe, or you're agreeing, then if everybody just needs to kind of speak up and let their voices be heard. That's what I think.
Well, I mean, that's what we think too. Like, we are big free speech proponents on this show. So I did follow you after your viral tweets, because I think Ben Shapiro retweeted you, and Joe Rogan too, I think, and I follow them. But what's interesting about you, Zuby, is that you are not someone who's angry about the world. Like Ben Shapiro tends to be like a bit angry about the world. You're not hysterical. You're not radical. You're not. You actually have. You appear to be a very mellow, pragmatic sort of chap. And I'm just wondering. I know that I heard you on another show that you grew up in Saudi Arabia for the part of your childhood. What is it about people that travel a lot being relatively comfortable in their skin? I don't know if that makes sense, but I think the fact that you have been around cultures that are different to yours makes one maybe not humble, but makes one aware that things are different and difference is all right.
Yeah. Well, it certainly has given me perspective that I think a lot of people lack. So everybody's got different experiences. We've all grown up in different places. There's countries that I don't know very much about, right? I don't know what it would be like to you. Where is it that you guys are based?
In South Africa,
Yeah, you're both based in South Africa.
indeed.
Okay, so I've never been to South Africa before, not yet. I'm sure I will at some point. So I don't know what it's like to grow up there or to live there. I've heard stories. I know people who are from there, both in the UK and living there now. And I don't have that perspective there. But having grown up across a couple different cultures, so being someone who's British by citizenry, born in the UK, lives in the UK now, but lived in the Middle East for almost 2 decades, went to school both in Saudi Arabia and also in the UK, grew up surrounded by people from different cultures, different religions, different races, everything like that from day one. And then someone whose background, in terms of my family background, originally from Nigeria, it's just given me, I guess, more of a holistic, global perspective on things. So I have a lot of gratitude in places where people don't have gratitude, and also the sort of, how would I say it, the scale that I view things on in terms of how I compare things seems to be different, say, to somebody who maybe just uh, was born in London and grew up in London and has always lived in London, right? I'm not saying that necessarily their perspective is wrong, but likely when it comes to a wider worldview, they may just not have the same perspective or depth of perspective or width of perspective. I don't know what the right term is that I might. So a good example would be, at the moment, both in the UK and the USA, it seems very popular, especially amongst younger people, to kind of crap on the countries, right? To be quite almost the opposite of patriotic, to be very, very deeply critical of the UK or the Western world or America. You're seeing people burning the American flag, or, you've got people who are American disrespecting America, or people who are British, just talking about how crap it is and how terrible. And I wonder, I'm like, what are you comparing things to here? Right. To me, that shows like a huge lack of gratitude for one, but also just a lack of perspective, because on a global level, any of these countries that we're talking about, there aren't that many other places most people would rather live. There's a reason why the vast majority of immigration from all over the world is going to the USA. It's going to Canada. It's going to the UK. It's going to Australia. There are reasons for that. It's not because people think that there's no opportunity and that there's mass poverty and that you know, that it's like people don't. There are very basic fundamental things that people have in these nations that are not common globally. And I don't know if people just don't understand that, or like, I don't know if it's naivety or ignorance, or if it's just a lack of appreciation. So something as simple as what you guys said earlier, free speech. Okay. Where I grew up, that's not a thing. There's no free speech. There's no free speech in Saudi Arabia, right? In terms of just equality under the law and everybody being able to do the same things. That's not the case there, right? Women, I was in Saudi Arabia, never saw a woman driving, because apart from outside of the little expat communities, because it's not legal. Loads of things, And there are pros and cons to, I think it's important to say there are pros and cons to everything. When people look at Saudi Arabia, even, people always have an extremely negative view, and it's very limited by what media paints for people and the little bit that people may know. Some of it's factual, some of it's correct, but people always look at it people just see the downside and they don't see any upside. And it's the same on both sides. And I can see that. I can speak from that perspective, having seen the different cultures, the different ways of going about doing things, both politically, religiously, culturally, all that kind of stuff. It's like you gain this appreciation of it. And then just having traveled to other places, and fortunately, I'm very lucky. I've never lived through any kind of poverty myself, but I've certainly seen with my own two eyes, like genuine, absolute poverty, not the relative poverty that you may get in a country like the UK, where someone is considered poor, but they still have a TV, they still have the internet, they still have a fancy mobile phone, they've often still got a car, but they're considered poor just because they're not earning as much as maybe the person next door to them. But I'm talking about abject poverty, people at the risk of starvation, not having access to clean water, people living in conflict zones, there being, risk of kidnapping, risk of, that's the reality for billions of people. So I just think people need to appreciate that. And then when you do appreciate that, you switch to a more grateful mindset. You think to a mindset of, oh gosh, wow, look, this is what we're doing right now is magic. Like, we're in different countries, thousands of miles away from each other, speaking in real time, being able to see each other. And then we're going to broadcast this out to thousands of more people. And, everyone, I don't know exactly where you guys are, but I'm assuming everyone's quite comfortable, right? No, everything's nice. There's a roof over the head. Oh, look, the lights are working, everything like that. There's places where they'll try to do this, even if they have their thing, and there'll just be a power cut, boom, everything just goes out, and it doesn't work. Let alone the people who don't even have a roof over their head or don't have food to eat or whatever. And when you become appreciative of these things, it's hard to stay downbeat. That's why I'm a very positive person. I think sometimes because of my Twitter, particularly because I deal with so much inflammatory stuff, I think sometimes people might think, oh, like this guy might be a little bit angry or hostile. It's like, no, not at all. I'm the most positive person. I'm super positive. I'm always upbeat. I'm always, I don't want to say I'm always in a good mood, because that's not realistic, but I'm always happy deep down. I'm always grateful. I'm very grateful every day. I wake up, things are good. And I know that 90% plus of the world would happily swap their lives with mine. So I try not to complain about a lot of things that other people seem to like complaining about. I just like to, move forward, get things done, inspire other people, motivate other people.
Yeah, there's a lot there that you've mentioned. I'm interested about the way people maybe don't appreciate what they have, especially in the sort of Western world, so to speak. And there's this weird sort of self-sabotage thing that's going on where, number one, I suppose there's a misunderstanding of how it is you get to being as free as you are and as well off as you are generally if you live in the United States or Canada or the UK or any of those types of countries, mixed together with this sort of sabotaging. In some respects, it's often trying to do good for the rest of the world. So someone who, say, stands for open borders, which I think in the current context is a silly position. I've got libertarian friends who tell me I'm an idiot for thinking that, but they think they're trying to help, right? You're in America, you're on the left, and you think, well, there's people from Guatemala and Mexico and wherever else, and they want to come across the border, and we should help them because we're better off than they are. But there's this fundamental misunderstanding of how it is you came to be where you are right now, and there's many things. One of them is accepting that men and women are different in good ways, and it's no disrespect to either gender, and I believe there are only two. There's a rejection of that notion. There's a rejection of how our sort of the organized West came to be and the principles on which that stands. There's a rejection of the justice system, for example. Social justice is almost a rejection of normal justice. It's saying normal justice isn't good enough. We need to find a different way, because the oppressed groups are still kept down by the system.
Well, some people would say that you're only saying that because you're a white man.
Of course, I'm a white cisgender. I mean, I'm a TERF, and I'm speaking to a transgender rapper. So
It's diverse.
but yeah. So I wonder what your take on, I suppose, why it is that people are so disconnected from their roots, how they got to be where they are, just how, as you said, sort of how lucky they are to kind of to be in the space they are, and to really try to make the change they want to see in the world in a more positive fashion, because at the moment it's very negative, and they don't seem to want to acknowledge a lot of the negative outcomes of what seem like often to be good ideas, like open borders, for example.
Well, I think what you've just touched on there is really the importance of the interplay of people with different types of personalities, which also feeds into political leanings. So people who are more conservative minded, for example, generally like borders and order and structure and hierarchies. And these things are not inherently bad at all. Oftentimes they are good. People who are more left leaning or more liberal minded politically tend to dislike borders. This is the reason why most artists are leftists, right? Because people don't want borders. They want to be able to cross boundaries and be more inclusive and open things up and feel like they're being more compassionate. It's more feelings driven. And it's also based on looking out for, at least traditionally, it's supposed to be based on kind of looking out for the dispossessed or the people who are not doing so well in the competitive structure and whatnot. And it's important to constantly have that interplay and that dialogue. I understand to people who are, firmly left wing, it can be very frustrating to speak to people who are firmly right wing, and people are talking across from each other because you're here saying, no, we need this, but we need these borders, we need the structure. There are only two genders, right? You don't want to just open everything up. You can't just have unfettered immigration and people flooding into a country. Like, this is going to cause problems. And then you've also got the people on the other side saying, well, if they're being reasonable, their argument should be like, oh, well, hang on, look, this is not working for everybody. Not everybody is winning. Maybe just because you're born in some country, should that mean that you get all these advantages and privileges that you haven't done anything for? What about this other person? What about that other person? So both sides, when they're sort of operating at their best, both have, very reasonable and fair points, and they can both cover each other's blind spots. So if you've got someone who's advocating open borders, say, the example you've used to you can push back and say, oh, well, what about this? What about that? Have you considered this? Have you considered that? Similarly, they might have some insight that you may not. Or you may think, oh, okay, I haven't considered that. Or, oh, maybe I overlooked that. Or maybe I didn't think about that problem and whatnot. And ideally, those two things, I mean, we're living in times where it's just very turbulent and it's divisive, and people just want to get in their little camps and their little tribes and not talk across the political aisle and whatnot. And that's pretty destructive, because you do ideally want both sides functioning. I don't think it's an accident that in any country you look at, the split amongst people, I mean, political views are more than a simple left-right split. But if you are to use that basic binary, it is split fairly 50-50 across every nation that I'm aware of. How conservative the conservative side is and how liberal the liberal side is will differ. But I don't think that's an accident, right? I think it's because you want both of those things working. Just in the same way, I don't think it's an accident that men and women are different and on average have different strengths and weaknesses. And you'll see that the female strengths tend to compensate for the average male weaknesses, and the male strengths tend to compensate for the average female weaknesses. And it's not simple black and white all the time, right? There's a huge amount of crossover, but in a functioning society, I think you want to have, like, to me, this is where the actual concept of true diversity is quite important, right? You're not just, oh, you're white, you're black, you're Asian, like whatever, right? If everybody thinks the same way, then, it's hard to look at a problem from different angles. But I think it's good to have those different minds. You've got that dialogue. If you can keep it healthy and non-aggressive and certainly non-violent, then things tend to balance out quite well, and you can have, make real progress. People can point out, oh, look, this group and that group are being excluded right now. Let's bring them in. And then you've also got people who are saying, okay, well, if you're trying to open everything up and you want to completely eliminate the concept of gender or sex, right? You've got people who push back and say, oh, wait, no, hang on. This is actually important. I understand, assuming you've got good intentions, I understand that you're trying to be inclusive to people who might be marginalized or people who feel like they do not fit into the typical binary or whatever. You're trying to make things okay for that person, but you need to make sure that you don't destroy all the stuff that's already working and that people have fought for in the process. So it's that constant tug of war.
So, I mean, I see your ideal society as a sort of a delicate balance between ideologies, and they sort of cover each other's blind spots. But I always wonder, and I've heard that argument from other people as well, and you've elucidated it quite well too. But I always wonder, has that actually ever existed in a material way? So I know, for example, a lot of conservatives are like, back in my day, we used to be stronger and go to war and et cetera, et cetera. Yes, but you didn't want to like share water fountains with like someone who's a different color than you. Like, you created your own safe space using state coercion to do it, which is far more nefarious than deplatforming Milo Yiannopoulos today, for example. So, I mean, my question to you really is, has there ever been this ideal scenario where left and right are sort of balanced and they sort of complement each other? Because for me, it's always been about power and culture at the end of the day, and whichever gets you into power is the one that you go for. And it has been the left for the last, say, since the fall of communism. We had the neoliberal left happening, and now it looks like it's the populist nationalists that are getting back into power. But I don't know of a time when it was calibrated in any meaningful way.
Well, I mean, in the past, I'm 32 years old. I mean, in my lifetime, at least in the UK and in the US, it seems like the balance has been pretty good. Certainly better than it's ever been in the past. I mean, I think if I look at the situation right now, certainly from a legal perspective, I think it's hard to argue that things have ever been fairer in terms of true equality of opportunity and equality under the law, and not having arbitrary laws saying, oh, two people of different skin colors can't get married, or this person is worth less of a human being than this person, or women can do this, but men can do this, but women can't do this, or like all that stuff it's taken a long time, and it's taken thousands of years. But I think we've actually reached a pretty good stage. It's certainly not perfect, but compared to history, and again, compared to, coming back to what I touched on earlier, compared to the wider world, it's pretty darn good. I think it's pretty darn good. And what I worry about is that people are going to ruin it, right? Like if people swing too hard in any direction and people become far too reactionary and divisive, then I think there's a worry that people are going to ruin what's actually been a very good thing.
There's an interesting pendulum sort of effect that happens, though, because the left is, I think it would be very hard for even a hardline conservative to argue, since they vacillate anyway towards leftist ideals. But the left has been very successful in their projects over the last sort of 30, 40 years. If you think about sort of more of the emancipation of women, women in the workplace, some people argue somewhat against that, but I think in terms of women being able to choose what they want to do in their lives, that's been a project of the left, and has been a good one, in my opinion. Gay rights, and the rights of, well, what has now become the LGBTQIA, etc. community, but yes, what originally was lesbian and gay rights, that's been a very important project, and I think I also think a good one. The problem I find is that when I look back at the history, you kind of see one side or the other take on these projects, which are noble projects. They get power over time, and then they use authority to exert power. So now the left has been kind of in power for a little bit too long. They've kind of gone over their skis on the original mandate. So they got where they wanted to be, and then they weren't sure where to go next. And then they went a little bit crazy. And some of that has resulted in them trying to authoritatively dictate what we can think and what we can't think, what we can say and what we can't say, to prevent us threatening their project, their new project.
Well, this is where the pushback is needed. I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, with a lot of these things, I mean, certainly maybe not from a fiscal or financial perspective, I think I've always leaned right on that in any sense of the term. But if you're talking about things like equal treatment across all groups and across all individuals, that is something that, I mean, if I imagine if we went back 40 years or 50 years before some of these civil rights, someone like myself, someone like yourselves, even if you had your exact current views in those time, we'd all be considered left wings. We'd be considered progressives. We'd be you'd be the one saying, oh, like, well, what about black people? What about women? What about gay people? Why are there these arbitrary laws and rules that are preventing them from fully integrating and being accepted and tolerated in society and whatnot? And so in terms of that project, that's good. So that's progress. That's you want to reach that happy medium. Not every country has reached that yet. You've still got lots of places around the world where they kind of need that, we can call it progressive movement or liberal movement, to emancipate and free up certain things. And then you need the conservatives to be like, okay, hang on, that's enough. Okay, like we can put the brakes on now. Like, we've achieved this and this. So you don't want to run off the ledge, right? You want to get to the stage where it's like, okay, cool, we've achieved equality of opportunity. And then when you start seeing people pushing for things like equality of outcome, that's when it's the time for responsible people who lean more conservative to say, oh no, hang on, no, you don't want to start putting in quotas based on people's gender or sexuality or race in companies or in universities. No, that's a step too far. You don't want to start confiscating all the rich people's money to give it to the people who are lower. No, that's a violation. So a lot of people, I think, have good intentions, but they don't know when to stop, right? Because it's like, okay, we've done that one, what's next? We've done that one, what's next? We've done that. And you need people to be like, wait, okay, like this, you can't just completely run off with this thing because it's going to cause this problem and that problem and that problem. Because you have some people who are more driven by, as I'm sure you guys know, you've got people who are almost completely driven by emotion and feelings. And, I think most people's intentions are good. It's like, oh no, they want to help people. We want to be compassionate. We want to be kind. And I get that, but you also need the people who are a lot more pragmatic and realistic and look at the facts and look at the data and can be like, oh no, hang on. If you do this, then it's going to result in this problem. It's going to result in that problem. And it can be hard to see what those problems will be further down the line. There's plenty of stuff that say happened in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. And you're now seeing what the real world result of some of that stuff is. Okay. So if you look at certain welfare policies that have been brought in certain countries, like in the US, for example, they said, okay, we want to help poor people. We especially want to help, say, poor Black people. And so we want to have certain welfare schemes that are going to be accessible and it'll help Black women and this and that. They didn't foresee that would lead to be a key role in the breakdown of the Black family, and think, oh, well, women are only eligible for this welfare if there's no man in the house or they're not married or whatever. So that created a perverse incentive. People now weren't getting married and, having more kids out of wedlock. And you've got so several decades down the line, you're now sort of dealing with all these problems that I imagine they didn't foresee at the time. I don't think they came up with those policies thinking, okay, we want to just like destroy stuff. They thought they were helping people. But sometimes, it's like if somebody's, I don't know, take it on a very small individual scale. If somebody is a homeless drug addict, okay, and I give them £100, and then with that £100, they go and buy their next dose of heroin, and they take them. Did I do a compassionate thing? It depends on what angle you look at it. It's like, oh, on one hand, you gave that person £100, but did you do the thinking of, what will they do with this? What sort of incentive am I incentivizing a negative behavior here? So you need people who can see both of these sides, or groups of people at least, who, when you combine them together, they can see the different angles. And, moving on from that slightly, I mean, that's a lot of the problem you're seeing in terms of the media and stuff like that. When you're seeing these places that just have these huge biases, like they've just got gigantic blind spots. I mean, CNN has a huge blind spot. Okay. Any large publication, like they've got huge blind spots, and that's because they've become too ideologically homogenous in their quest for diversity. They've lost their actual diversity in the important sense, right? If you had, say, if you took a very left-leaning media organization, I'm like, if you had a couple of conservatives working there, there's no way some of these stories would get put out the way they do, because you'd have someone who goes, wait, no, hang on, like that's not right, or that's very biased. Like they can't. It's very hard to see your own biases. Very hard to see your own biases. I mean, by definition, you cannot see your own blind spots. So you need somebody else to go, oh, hang on, you missed something there. So it's and that's why it's important. Yeah, I've kind of rambled a little bit. So
yeah, no, I agree with you. I think South Africa is a good example, as someone says in the chat here, Etienne. It's a very good example of a country without a conservative force over the last 25 years. So, I mean, very short basic history. The whites took over, created a segregation, apartheid, tried to sort of create a sort of federal European system between the different tribes of South Africa. Didn't work out, wasn't sustainable, very expensive. It collapsed under its own economic contradictions. And then power was given over to what's the African National Congress, which is a sort of black nationalist party. And now 25 years later, the economy is in tatters and we bankrupt and racial tensions are at all-time high.
Yep.
But the ANC started out with forced race quotas, like back in 98. You cannot study certain things if you're a white person unless all the black candidates have been really like eliminated from the route. And these sort of policies have had very little opposition. And if you did oppose them in any way, you were called all sorts of names, which were very powerful, especially in South Africa in 98 to like 2006. If you were called a racist, that's like saying you're a Nazi, like in a literal sense, because there's a real history of racism in this country, and it was a very, very powerful thing. Now today, you still get the accusations, but it's a lot less powerful these days. And the conservative movement here is basically non-existent, and it shows in the daily grind of life in a way. I'm not saying it's a bad place to live in. Don't get me wrong. I quite enjoy living here for now before they really destroy it. But there's no sense of a conservative voice or conservative movement in this country. It's starting now slowly, but you can see if people are not checked, the destruction wrought over a decade or two is profound.
But both sides have their excesses, and you've seen that play out in history in different countries multiple times, right? If people start going too hard right, and it starts getting into notions of, I mean, like you touched on earlier with apartheid, right? It starts becoming an ethnic thing, right? You can start getting to levels of ethno-nationalism or ethno-supremacy, or extreme levels of nationalism and xenophobia and things like that. Like that's when the right goes too far. That's like, okay, we're just going to have, this is the hierarchical structure, and it's rigid and it doesn't change. These people are included, these people are excluded, and that can go horribly. And then you've also got the excesses of the left when you've got full-blown Marxism and communism, and you've got people trying to, okay, we're going to literally kill the rich and give to the poor, or we're going to send people off to gulags, or we're going to round people up. And, it's both sides have their excesses. If the pendulum swings too hard and for too far in any one direction, I mean, you guys obviously will be much closer to this than I am, but I've seen a lot of the rhetoric that's coming out of South Africa. I know people who have left the country because they feared for their safety and stuff like that. I've heard a lot of stories, and I've seen what's going on with some of the farm murders and the brutality and all this kind of stuff. So I'm aware of it. I'm not as close to it as you guys are, but I'm aware of it. I'm seeing it, and you're seeing that's the pendulum swinging too far. And a lot of people are the sad thing is that you get a lot of people who just become resentful of certain things. So you can create these situations where it's a bit like how if somebody gets bullied or abused, then they can go on to become the bully or the abuser. So you get these people who, they themselves or maybe their ancestors or historically had been genuinely oppressed or genuinely marginalized and excluded. And then it breeds in them this contempt for whoever they deem to be the oppressor, whether that is the white man or the black man or who it could be whoever. And then they, that brews in them. And that can happen both on an individual level and also like on a national level. And that just creates this hostility where it's like, okay, people don't want fairness and equality at that stage. They kind of just want revenge. And that's very, very scary, right? That's when it becomes dangerous, because people don't even want, they're not even saying, okay, we want a fair playing field. They're saying, oh, these people did this to us, so let's go and do the same thing to them because we've got the power now. And that's just I don't use the word toxic often, but that's an extremely toxic and dangerous mentality. And again, if you're aware of history, even just the past 100 years, you've seen this play out several times. And so that's why that's why I speak out on a lot of the things that I do, because it seems like there's a lot of stuff that might seem like, oh, it's not important, it doesn't matter or whatever, right? But you're sort of seeing the early warning signs of deeper problems and issues. So a great example that's very current, and I think people would be able to understand, is this current trend of demonizing the straight white male. Okay. So in the USA, in the UK, and whatever, you've got certain people, always people who are left leaning, some of them quite radical, who have got this whole idea of, when they use terms like whiteness or white supremacy, they're not even talking about white supremacy. Does have a definition, right? It has a real definition, but they sort of take these terms and they bastardize them to just mean something completely different. So they're like, oh, this is white supremacy and that's white supremacy, or this is what's the term, radical feminists use, the patriarchy, and the white man this and the white man that, and you've got certain black people or Asian people who kind of spew the same rhetoric, and I find that alarming. So that's something I speak out about myself, because I'm like, look, no, this isn't the way forward. You're just doing the same thing. If you can replace the word white with a different race, or you can replace the word man with woman or whatever, and it sounds extremely bigoted, it sounds sexist, it sounds racist. If you can do that, then it is. Okay. If you're on Twitter and someone is tweeting hashtag white men are trash, right? Can you imagine someone tweeting hashtag black women are trash? No, you can't. If someone did that, people would be rightfully up in arms. So don't play the same stupid game. Don't use the same stupid rhetoric. Don't be, it's so basic. Don't judge people based on the color of their skin. Don't judge people based on their sex. Don't judge people based on their sexuality. It's very, very basic stuff that
If
I
only
wish.
there was a civil rights leader
Yeah,
who had
yeah,
said
yeah,
that. I mean,
yeah, literally. But it's strange. I find it weird that I have to even say these things sometimes, because you shouldn't have to, but then you'll get people be like, oh, it's different when I do it. It's different when and it's like, no, it's not. So that's the kind of stuff that I think is important to nip in the bud. Just like I would nip it in the bud if I started seeing people saying, I don't know, demonizing black men, or saying, oh, all
yeah.
black men are this. So I'm like, that's, I'll step in for anybody. It doesn't matter whether I'm in that demographic myself or not. And that's the principle people need to have.
I'm not sure how much you buy into the horseshoe theory, but obviously, you spoke about like ethno-nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me the sort of victim Olympics and the sort of oppression scale of trying to fit in on that is like a horseshoe theory, but then on its sort of head. So an ethno-nationalist, a white nationalist, for example, believes
Mm-hmm.
that, as a white supremacist, believes that white people are better than all other races and all other people,
Mm-hmm.
and all other creeds. And in a way, the victim sort of scale does the same thing. It
It's the
goes,
same thing.
the more victimized you are, the more supreme you are within the societal grouping. And then
It's
what
all
that
the same thing.
means, is so it's interesting. It's the same as how Antifa has essentially become
Fascist.
fascist. They
Yeah.
are fascists.
Yeah.
And I can even buy that perhaps when they started out, they really thought they were just kind of being anti-fascist. Trump's a fascist and we're going to stand against him, #resistance or whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is. And so we're going to be anti-fascist because we believe he's a fascist.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have been fine. I mean, that's just part of a free speech.
And then the definition of fascist grows and widens and widens and widens, and now you're a fascist
Exactly.
and I'm a fascist and he's
So
a fascist.
So this brings me to the next point on that, which is that the mob has become a real dangerous aspect of our sort of daily lives. I mean, you're probably spared in some respects. I mean, you're saying you're getting these DMs from people, some very sort of high up people, and I can tell you that I get WhatsApp messages as well from journalists and from people in politics, also saying the same thing. Carry on what you're doing. It's great. I really enjoy your podcast and the show, and I appreciate what you tweet and all the rest of that kind of stuff. But I can't say it because I'll get fired. And
Mm-hmm.
the truth is I understand. I don't know how well like Gad said in Canada.
Yeah, he's been on my podcast.
Yeah, so great guy, and Gad gets very annoyed with people who send him those kinds of messages and thank him because he's like, that's great, but like, why don't you get involved? Then why don't you like be part of this? But at the same time, we've got everyone at every level, and people on the left, people on the right. It doesn't really matter. When the mob comes for you, they will end you directing Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And that's a person pretty much on the left. But they will also take out anyone on the right, as well, for whatever it is. I mean, what was that guy who's a Trump supporter who was posting some Facebook memes, and I think Vox or Huffington or one of them hunted this guy down, doxed the guy. He works. He's like a part-time worker. I mean, the guy's he has no wealth. He has no power. He's a supporter of the president, and he posted some stuff. So the mob has become this really dangerous aspect of our sort of day-to-day existence. I don't know if you see it as dangerous and as threatening.
People need to just stop being cowards, man. That's really what it comes down to. No, really.
Sure.
I don't just mean individuals. I mean companies that employ individuals.
I agree with this.
I mean everybody. I mean companies. I mean universities. People need to stop throwing each other under the bus. People need to, right? If someone calls up your workplace and is like, "Oh, I don't like this guy," blah blah, your workplace should be like, "Okay, bye."
Yeah, I've long said on Twitter how refreshing it would be if like someone complained on Twitter and they were like, this guy's a homophobe or something or whatever it is, based on something that wasn't actually realistic or wasn't reasonable, and the company just turned around. And it would be great if it were like a big company like Nike or something like that. They just turn around and we're like, we're not getting bullied today. Kind of get bent,
no, really, that's what they need to do. They need to stop bowing to these little tiny 0.001% of the population. I mean, you saw what happened with that Nike shoe that had the Betsy Ross flag on. And, you know, that stuff like that annoys me because I'm just like, man up, right? If you want to release the shoe, release the shoe. Don't have one person complained about it, so we need to pull the entire project. It's like, man up. Like on an individual level, on a group level, on a company level, I'm just like, it's getting ridiculous because these mobs are like, they're like sharks. Okay, it's blood in the water.
Yeah.
So if you try to appease them, then, and they see that their tactics work, why do you think they keep coming for people? If it stopped working, they'll stop doing it. The only reason they keep doxing people and trying to get people banned and blacklisted and all this stuff is because they know it works. They're like, oh, look, these companies are weaklings, right? I can just make a tweet and at some huge giant corporation and they're going to bend their knee to my will. Like, corporate, they shouldn't even respond. Or if they respond, they just be like, no, like, we've decided to do this and we're going to do it. You know,
well, I mean, do you two remember Protein World?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely.
I mean, they actually said, for those who
your
don't
beach body, right? It was the beach
body.
Really
they bossed
beautiful model and a Subway poster, and people were like obsessed about this poster being like really sexist. And
I remember seeing them in London.
I followed their Twitter thread. They're like, "Oh, we're really sorry you're upset. We don't care." Yeah, go ahead. Exactly. And they increased sales by thousands of percent in like weeks and weeks and weeks. So obviously it works if you just like mock people who are offended all the time.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump wins the presidency by basically doing that, right? Going like, I'm going to say whatever I want. You're going to get outraged and I don't care. And then like by not caring, people are going to be like, oh, somebody actually stands up to the kind of the mob in a way.
Yeah, it's because I respect that. I respect that totally. No, really, I respect
even if
that
he's
totally.
Talking shit, right?
Look, if you want to, I think if you make a mistake and you genuinely hurt someone, you do something wrong, you sin, for lack of a better word, then absolutely, yes, apologize. But don't apologize for something you're not sorry for.
There's also this weird thing, right? So if I offend you, then like I don't need to apologize to the whole
everybody
world.
else. No,
I can just apologize to you, and you can be like, I've accepted the apology, and we're fine. Like, we've moved on.
And people just need to be. People just are acting like children, really. People are acting like children. It's like if there's an issue between two people, you don't need to widen the issue to 1 million people on Twitter. You know what I mean? Like, you can just deal with it. It's like, we'll just call the person up, email them, speak to them, and resolve the thing. Don't go and create some war to attack this person or whatever. It's just, it's weird. It's I mean, that's one of the downsides of the tools, I guess, that are available and the scale of it, and how I can go on Twitter right now and I can potentially reach like 100,000 people from my phone. Like, that's a ridiculous power that none of my ancestors ever had. And with Spider-Man quote, Uncle Ben, with great power comes great responsibilities. But it's true, because people have this. They're like weapons of mass destruction. You see what I mean? So before people had clubs, but now everyone's got a potential nuke, and we've got nukes of different sizes depending on how big your audience is and who you're
interesting. We don't learn though, because I think the first really good example of this was I don't know if you remember Justine Sacco. So she was
she's the one who did the tweet before getting on the plane.
Yeah, American South African, and basically lives in America, but her family's from South Africa, and she got on the plane. Something about I'm going to Africa. I hope I don't get AIDS. Only joking. I'm white or whatever. She was actually kind of making a joke of people who are ignorant enough to believe that there's any kind of race basis to that disease. Anyway, tweeted, got on the plane, no signal, obviously, flies for 18 hours. And by the time she was landing, there was a hashtag trending, when is Justine landing or something like that. And yeah, big news, and everyone sort of jumped onto it. There's been a lot written up about sort of the evolution of that mob and what subsequently happened, and how her life was turned upside down and all the rest of it. Interestingly enough, I saw the other day she's working back at the company that fired her when
interesting.
They when that all broke.
You see, I mean, in a normal world, we would never even have heard that joke.
Yeah.
Right. Let alone like we wouldn't even know who she is. You see, like she's famous for this not like that. Okay, yeah, it's a someone can say, oh, that's a bad joke. That's not in color. But the fact that did it need to go out to millions of people across the world? Like why people tell dumb jokes in private all the time, right? I'm sure as we're
Hold on,
speaking here.
Zuby.
Yeah.
Sorry, Zuby. Hold on. You did a dumb joke, and you got 100,000 followers. So don't come here and preach to us about keeping jokes private, please. A bit of context.
In fairness, though, just the other day there was a comedian. There was a clip it's a Comedy Central clip. She's on a big show for Comedy Central. I forget her name now, and she makes a joke about Extentation, or the rapper that got shot. Yeah. And the joke goes something to the effect of, "Yeah, Extentation is dead. Did you know this?" And she's speaking to a crowd who has no idea who she's talking about, and they go all quiet. And essentially, the joke goes, "Yeah, he was taking $50,000 in cash to a friend, and someone shot him for the money." And I've just been really thinking about it, that it was a great ad for Venmo, which is it's a payment app essentially. And it was a good joke. She, her timing was excellent, and it's a really good joke. Anyway, they played this sort of clip on one of the Comedy Central linked channels on Twitter, and there was a whole bunch of outrage. She had to like lock her account, and she's a comedian, for God's sake. Like that's what she's there to do. She's there to make jokes exactly like that. And
was it Amy Schumer? I hope not, because then I have to like.
No, it's a sort of young up and coming comedian. Yeah, really, actually funny. Very Dave Chappelle like in her the way she does her comedy.
Yeah. The thing is, people also need to learn. I mean, having as somebody who's been on the end of a lot of mobs, certainly on Twitter, is it blows over so quickly. It blows over so quickly. Like if I tell people, look, if you ever get the mob attacking you, literally log off for 48 hours.
Yes, the 48-hour rule. This is 100%.
Honestly, they'll move on to somebody else. They'll find the next trending hashtag. They'll find the next person who's made a slip of the tongue or done something wrong, and they'll jump on that individual. Because if you cave, like I said, they're sharks. They taste a bit of blood in the water, and they will go for you. That's why. Like I said, if you've genuinely messed up and you feel like you've crossed a line, then apologize. There's nothing wrong with apologizing. You can even, if it's been a public thing, do it. You can do it publicly. Say, like if I say, I don't know, say I try to be somewhat careful with what I tweet, but if I put out something that was just okay, like I looked at it myself and I was like, nah, Zuby, that was not the one, right? Then I'll be like, I'll post a little video, or I'll post something saying, you know what, guys, like I've deleted that tweet, like. It wasn't the thing, and that's it. And I'll move on. I'm not going to be dragged for the rest of my lifetime in my career because I once tweeted something slightly foolish, even by my own admission. And I think this is where the problem with this mentality, this sort of mob mentality as well, is that people have lost the concept of forgiveness and salvation. Like this is where I don't know, feel like I'm going to go off on some sort of slight religious tangent, right? But in any religion, you've got this idea of forgiveness and salvation. So it's like, yeah, you mess up, you sin, you err, you may lie, you may cheat, you may harm other people sometimes, but there's salvation. You can come back, right? That's why I don't like this mob thing of someone's just, it's like, oh, it's cancel culture, right? Like this person is just canceled, and you can't get uncanceled once you're canceled, right? That's the whole idea of it. It's okay, they're just cast out, they're ostracized, they're blacklisted. It doesn't matter what they do from now on, no matter what, they can't come back. And this is not, you're not talking about someone who's murdered someone or committed some horrible crime or something. This is someone who's told a bad joke or made a dumb tweet or something.
It's interesting. They're a bit like, because the mob isn't you sort of organized, but they are a bit like the velociraptors in Jurassic Park. They're like testing the fence, right? Because just the last couple of days they've tried to cancel Quentin Tarantino because all his movies show violence against women. Never mind the fact that he's had like I think 4 films with women as the leads, as like the strongest women that you could ever imagine.
Didn't you do Kill Bill?
Kill Bill. I mean, two volumes where literally you do not fuck with Uma Thurman. But
hold on. How many men have died in Quentin Tarantino's films? Like thousands?
All of them. Yeah.
Far more than women.
And
So,
how
no,
many
but
women have been killed? Like 5.
So this is the thing. The mobs kind of over the last couple of days tried to go after Quentin Tarantino on this basis that he is. So they sort of brought in the Harvey Weinstein thing because he was the only guy who kind of said, look, I knew Harvey wasn't sort of on the up and up and I should have done better, which is not a bad position to take. Yeah, you probably should have done better. And at least you're acknowledging it now. At the end of the day, Harvey's the guy that was responsible for his shitty behavior. But so that was where it started, and then it was like, oh yeah, look, check all his films. He's like he uses there's violence against women, which there is some violence,
and
against
they've just
women.
Discovered this now as well. That's
yeah,
the thing.
yeah, of course.
Like, it's like this stuff just springs up, and
but it's like those
well,
velociraptors testing the fence, right? Because they failed on this occasion, so they haven't kind of got through. No one's canceling Quentin Tarantino. Like, get over it. And I mean, it's hilarious because the latest movie is about the Manson family, and people are like defending the Mansons. To go after Tarantino, it's insane.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. If you cancel Tarantino, I'm going to do violence because that man is a directing god, and he's made great films about shooting Nazis, which is probably one of the best films ever. Inglourious Bastards. Everyone should watch it. But Zuby, just going back to you quickly, one last political question. Then I want to get something to a little bit more lighter, mainly rap. Politically, Brexit. I mean, yes, I'm sure you're tired of speaking about it, but we supported it right from the beginning. We were very surprised to some degree when it went through. Obviously, the politicians fucked it up. No one's surprised about that. Bojo is back in town now. He says, "Come, hell or high water, we out October 31st." Does Brexit mean anything to you, or for you, is it just a democratic decision that needs to be adhered to, or is there something more innate about it?
I don't have a very strong opinion on it, to be completely honest with you. I feel like ideologically, I support leave. Like ideologically, I support Brexit. Practically, I'm more in the Remain camp. So I can.
No, wait, hold on. I know this show is about binaries and it's about taking firm positions. This sort of nuanced debate, we leave that for we want yes or no. It's very simple.
No.
That's what life is
about. Yeah. No, really. I mean, that's been my position on it.
Is it that it really is quite difficult to extricate the country from the EU, essentially, practically speaking?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, because it's something that hasn't been done before. So there's a lot of staying in the EU. It's just like business as usual. Okay, stuff just continues. I know that I travel around Europe a lot, right? And I'm also a musician, so I can travel to any country within the EU. I don't need a visa. I can go there. I can just, we essentially open borders, right? I can go to Czech Republic. I can go to Germany. I can go to France. Whatever. No one bothers me. It's cool. And then, that's kind of on an individual, personal level, and then on a wider level, it's just like the EU's been there since I've been alive. You know what the deal is. It is what it is. So when I say on a practical level, I think, well, why introduce this huge unknown or a whole bunch of unknowns into the equations? In terms of from an ideological perspective, in terms of a country being able to make its own laws and the democratic process being based on what the people within that own country want, and there not being an outside governing body and all that. That's why I say ideologically, I'm sort of pro-Brexit. But in terms of the practical ideas, especially because to this day, I mean, so long after the vote, almost 3 years after the vote, they still don't really know what. It's still very up in the air. It's not like, okay, this is exactly what's going to happen. This is the timeline. This is the plan. It's like nothing has been agreed. It's just.
So just from we're distant from this. We're pro Brexit, but I mean, it's easy to say that when it will have very little effect on us. We have to pay your government a large amount of money to visit your country. For a visa, we shouldn't have to pay since we're a Commonwealth country. But anyway, separate discussion. But I think there's a lot of propaganda on sort of both sides. I know the Leave campaign was given a lot of trouble for their propaganda around immigration, and sort of this very sort of threatening image of people just storming the border or just coming across, streaming across. But I feel like the other side also gives this sort of false picture. Like I'm never understood why no one can explain to me why Switzerland has free movement in the EU, but isn't actually part of the EU, for example. And I'm not convinced that if you have a no-deal Brexit at the end of October, I think it is, I'm not convinced that the next day they don't just accept that they lost, essentially, because that's what this is. It's just a little bit of a battle, and someone's going to lose eventually. And they accept that they lost, and they realize that it's very useful to have you coming into Germany or Czech Republic whenever you want, because you're spending your money in their country and in their zone, in their economic zone. And so it'd be silly for them not to have you there. And equally in reverse, because some German scientist is working at the hospital down the road from you and sending money back home, or and giving his skills to the UK. So, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about how these things could really work, and a lot of just sort of propaganda and threatening kind of attitudes around these things. It's and the other thing is, it's interesting around economics. All around the world there are economic problems. Like in the US, they're going to run out of money for like their social services by probably 2026 for the one half and 2032 for the other half, and they cannot stop spending. Like they just increased the debt ceiling, the Republicans and the Democrats and Trump, like they're all guilty. And it's often difficult to see like the things you need to do to make your economics better, and just to carry on seems like the right thing to do. So like the UK, I mean, I really do think that Brexit will make you probably economically stronger in the long term, because it will sever those ties to those EU rules that sort of hamstring a lot of your industries, which may make your life not necessarily directly better, but if your country does economically better, you'll do better. So that's my take on really why it's probably a good thing.
Yeah, I'll be honest, man. I think that I believe in the UK, and I believe in people in general, and I think that I don't buy into the fear mongering on either side, right? So the people who are saying that, oh, if we stay in the EU, that it's going to be horrible and everything's going to go to, I'm like, no, I don't think so. But also the people who are saying, oh, if we leave the EU, everything's going to fall apart. There's going to be bread lines. The price of apples is going to triple. We're not going to be able to have steak and cheese. And I'm like, no.
Corbyn is dreaming about this as we speak.
Yeah, there's the fear mongering on both sides. I'm just like, nah, it's not. It'll work out. It'll work out either way. Like it will work out either way. So I don't dedicate any mental energy to it, to be honest. I'm just like, look, whatever you're going to do, just get on with it. And then I feel like so much of the government time, energy, and resources is just being bogged down in it for the past 3 years now, that it's, to me, just make something happen, and then we can actually talk about some other issues.
Boris Johnson will do it. You have faith, Zuby, have faith. My last question to you, because it's a school night and it's past 11 p.m. in South Africa, rap music. So Bo Burnham made this point once. On Jimmy Fallon, they invite like this young white actress to mime or to do karaoke to like NWA's music. Now, NWA was a highly political, strong rap group, predominantly against the police, against the state, very radical. Fuck the Police was obviously one of their best songs. And Bo Burnham, who's this comedian, makes this point, like, this song was a very important cultural piece for the times, and now they're just shitting on it, trying to make fun, trying to make middle class white people laugh.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that was the context of the joke he was doing. Like, for me, I like rap a lot. Anything from Tupac to Biggie to Eminem and Akala. Akala is one of my favorite ones. You
didn't mention somebody.
Well, Zuby, I'm going to be honest. I heard your music, and I think you're a good rapper, but it's not my style. I like the violent,
Okay,
He
you like the,
Googled all of
serious
those
you like
names
the,
just
you
before
like
this
the ignorant
podcast,
stuff.
man. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
No way. Listen to Akala, Murder Runs the Globe. It's a phenomenal song. Not that I believe it, because Akala is actually quite a sort of a leftist chap, but I like his artistry.
Yeah.
But anyway, rap is originally like protest music, right? And you don't use it as protest music, and I respect that greatly.
I don't think
Why?
most people do.
Not anymore. And I agree with you. Why rap over other forms of music? And secondly, do you think that you should be able to parody like protest music? Don't get me wrong, but do you think that you diminish the power of rap by making jokes about it? If that makes sense.
Okay. First question is easy to answer. I'm not a good singer. I am a good rapper, so I rap. I don't sing. And also, what I love about hip hop is it's one of the most expressive genres. It's the only genre where I want to say hip hop and country are probably the two genres where you can literally make a song about anything without it being weird. Like you can literally make a rap song about anything and there's no bounds and you've got a lot of space to express yourself. There's a ton of lyrics. You've got 2 to 3 verses, 2 to 4 verses to say whatever you want. And I mean, the average rap song has about 8 times as many lyrics, 10 times as many lyrics as the average pop song. So there's plenty of space there to express yourself. In terms of the second question, I think jokes are jokes, man. If it's something is funny, then that's okay. I'm not precious over my own music or the genre in general. I'm not some kind of gatekeeper saying, oh, you can't make fun of hip hop or you can't lip sync this or you can't use this song in this thing. I'm kind of like, whatever. Yeah, as long as it's funny and I guess somewhat respectful in a way that's not, just trying to demean the original creator of the work or anything like that. Like, I don't think that would be cool. But if it's just someone appreciating it and having some fun with it, then I'm personally, different people may have different feelings on that, especially the artists, the creators of the song. But to me, I'm kind of like, whatever. If someone took one of my songs and did a YouTube parody or a YouTube video of them rapping it or what, I'd be like, cool, awesome. Like, I'll share that on my social media. So that's my personal view on it.
I mean, I agree with you in that regard, but can we agree that mumble rap is shit?
Most of it, yeah.
Yes. Okay, we can be friends now. Jonathan, any questions from you, sir?
I got nothing. I got nothing on rap, Ramon. I'm sorry. I'm not.
Yeah, I know. Jews don't listen to rap for some reason.
Jeez, there you go. Yeah, come bring the anti-Semitism on the close of the podcast.
What about Drake, man? Drake's a good rapper.
No.
What about Mac Miller, R.I.P.?
No.
No, Beast. A couple of the Beastie Boys are Jewish, right?
Yeah. Are they?
I think that's correct.
Yeah.
And I actually do like Drake, but some of his stuff. But no, I don't have too much on the music side. But maybe perhaps just on the sort of commercialism of hip hop. It used to be quite as Ramon says, protest music, and also quite underground in a way. And it's now the music of the age. It is the music. You can't really separate pop even from hip hop because they've kind of bastardized it in a way. The fact that you've got kind of Jay-Z and Beyonce as kind of king and queen of the hip hop world, that shouldn't really be able to exist in the context of what hip hop is meant to be. I suppose, what do you make of commercialism? I suppose it sells you records. So,
to be honest, it's been there my entire lifetime. Like, everything you just said has been true my entire life. So maybe if I were a little bit older, then it would be more like I remember what it was like in the 70s or early 80s, but it's been super commercialized and mainstream ever since I started listening to it. So for me, it just kind of,
and possibly the natural evolution.
Yeah, but that's what capitalism does, though.
Yeah,
but that's what capitalism does anyway. It takes something radical, like absorbs it, repackages it into a commercial entity, and then sells it to the masses at the end of the day. So it's sort of, if you're a purist, like you would, I think, hate capitalism in a way. I mean, it's like the band Anti-Flag, who are anarchist communist band. And they had independent records their whole life, and they were like anti-state, anti-capitalism, anti-everything, anti-corporatism. And then they signed a record label and made millions of dollars off being anti-corporate and anti-capitalist. A bit like Rage Against the Machine as well.
Like I say,
and it's like this weird contradiction.
If you're really all those things, then do free concerts and give your music away for free. People like to decry capitalism, but then profit off of decrying capitalism. It happens all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah, cough, cough, Michael Moore, cough, cough.
Yeah. Oh, geez, what an example! Yeah, I mean, what an example. I wasn't even thinking of him, but brilliant example.
Yeah, that is a really good example. And Bernie Sanders is
he's a multimillionaire.
From selling a book, he claims.
So it's like if you're that down with.
It's like I saw. I think someone tweeted this the other day. Greatest bio ever, and it was a bio of someone. It was a woman who had said something like, "Tall, blonde communist only date men who earn more than 6 figures."
I did see that,
and I was like, "Yeah, that's pretty much that's."
Come on, that has to be a troll.
Perhaps, but the New York Times published that guy's book review of luxury. What's it? Luxury communism.
Oh yeah.
So
Aaron Bastani is his name.
There you go. So
full auto luxury communism. It's great to be a communist when you live in a country like the UK. Capitalism has given you all this excess, and all you do is shit on it. It's great. I think it's phenomenal. But Zuby, talking about capitalism, you sir are a businessman, so I'm going to give you, please, as much time as you want. Where can we find you? Where can we buy your stuff, your music, your shirts, all that sort of stuff?
No problem at all. Well, I've got it pretty succinct now. So if you want to buy any merchandise, teamzuby.com. That's a team ZUBY music. Sorry, teamzuby.com. Zuby Music is my main website, zubymusic.com. So teamzuby.com for merch, zubymusic.com for music and info and gig dates and stuff. At Zuby Music on all social media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, which is the most fun, and Instagram at Zuby Music. And my latest album, Perseverance, is available now on Spotify, iTunes, and every other digital platform. And my new book, which is a fitness book called Strong Advice, is available now. You can find the link on any of my websites. You'll also find it on social media. And I'm doing a pre-order campaign for the paperback right now, which is selling extremely well. So if you want to get a copy, the ebook's available now and the paperback is coming.
Just explain to us how that came to be, because I mean, you're a rapper, but how did you get into sort of personal fitness? What made you want to write that book?
Yeah, no problem. Well, I've been training for longer than I've been rapping. I've been training for half my life. And I've, I think my qualification has lapsed, but I am a qualified personal trainer. And I've been bodybuilding, powerlifting for a long time, gained a massive amount of knowledge and experience. And it's something that I find myself advising people on anyway. And I found that I'm always answering the same questions and giving out the same advice and whatever. So I thought, why don't I, one of my friends encouraged me to, say, wait, why don't you make an ebook? And kind of sold me on the idea. So I sat down and I wrote it. I put all the stuff I wish I knew when I first started, all the stuff that's important, bin all the stuff that's not important, get it condensed, concise, and put that out there. And people have been getting really good results with it. People have been giving me really positive feedback. It's got tons of 5-star reviews, seen some progress photos, which have been really good. So it's fitness is really important to me. I'm obsessed with self-improvement. So anything that makes me better physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, whatever, I'm just really into maximizing my potential. And I think that everybody else should, and fitness is a part of that.
Roman does CrossFit, so I'm going to get him your book because he needs to learn something.
I did powerlifting for 10 years, and then I did CrossFit because the talent stack is just
we
better.
We all make mistakes, Roman.
Well, let me know when you start doing any exercise with.
Every day, Ramon.
Most important question: what's your max deadlift?
606 pounds.
In the Queen's English, what is that?
275 kilograms.
Okay, shit. Yeah, that's above mine. Fuck. And squats?
It's above most people's. My squat's not that impressive. My max squat is about 200.
That's still above mine, though. Holy shit. Okay. And bench press?
147.
Ooh, almost got you there. 140. All right.
Yeah.
Well, mine is, if you're really interested, deadlift
God,
is 210 and
Mhm.
squat is 150 and bench is like 130, just in case people want to know. I'm ripped, bro.
That's good, man. That's good. Strong
Thank
man.
you.
Right, I'm
for
not
the master
bragging about
himself.
any of that. Thank you.
Zuby, we found you because you had a funny video on the internet, and we spoke for what, almost an hour and a half, and you must be like one of the nicest people we've had on
thank you.
this podcast. Like just in terms of demeanor and the ability to speak and just common sense stuff. And after speaking to you, it's like more people should be like this. It's quite refreshing to hear someone. No, but to hear someone who's just like confident in who they are and not trying to be anything else. It's refreshing. And thank you so much for your time. It's been
You're welcome, man.
an absolute pleasure for me to have you on.
Yeah,
welcome, man.
thanks. I echo Ramon's sentiments. It's been an absolute pleasure, and good luck, dude. I assume you're going to do some cool stuff in the US as well, so we'll be looking out for it.
Most definitely.
Well, you going on Rogan 5th of September, right?
Yep.
Bloody bastard. That's one of my things. Just drop the Renegade Report in there.
Tell Rogan he's got fans in South Africa. Lots.
Yeah, will do.
All right, cool, man. Thanks, Zay.
Zuby, thanks, my man.
Guys,
Speak
care,
soon.
Yeah. Peace out.
Cheers. Right,
Ramon?
Jonathan. Yeah, geez, I wish we were like as motivated as Zuby to get this Renegade Report stuff like out with merchandise and stuff. We're very lazy.
That is his job. No, I'm not lazy. I'm busy most mornings from about 5:30 a.m. So thank you, as are you, I think.
From 4:30 a.m. actually. Come to think about it.
You see, you beat me again on deadlift and time you wake up. So what can I do?
Yes. Well, no, but I really meant it. You're not very nice guy. Like one of the nicest ones we've had.
I agree.
Very refreshing.
Yep. All right, good. So that's a double header, a double whammy for the week. No complaints from all of you people listening who don't pay us anything. Go to www.renegadereport.co.za/support-us and actually do that because you're freeloaders and it's getting rather annoying. So if you wouldn't mind, we'd appreciate some of your money. It's not really worth much anyway. 6 million odd unemployed people in the country. The rand's about to hit 20 to the dollar. Give it to us before it goes away.
Yes, I mean, you can't moan about commies all the time and you just expect free stuff from us.
Yeah. I'm nothing more to be said then.
Yeah, I mean, this microphone didn't come from a tree. We had to go buy it with money we don't have. So, no, but the reason why we asked for donations is because it helps us make the podcast better. So we use donations to buy like these things so it sounds better for you. And we're going to use those donations going forward for other stuff that makes the podcast a lot better and a lot more interesting for you to listen to. And if you donate already, thank you very much. If you wish to, please go ahead. Look after yourself first and then give us whatever you have left over. Please don't stop feeding your children so you can fund us. That'll be a cool story. But yeah, don't do that. Anyway, I'm off. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week. Ciao.
Goodbye. Cheers.